Hey there, friend. I'm genuinely happy you've chosen to watch this. And if you feel like hitting that subscribe button, it would truly mean the world to me. Really. So let's not waste another second. Let's begin. Peter trusted people the way most people breathe, naturally, without question. So when he uncovered the brutal reality that his wife and his best friend had been hiding an affair, he didn't scream, didn't break things. Instead, he moved with chilling calm, unraveling their lives thread by thread in a way they'd never forget. Here's how it all started. Peter Whitman had a calming presence that made others feel safe. A financial advisor based in Chicago, he was measured in both tone and temperament, with an expression that made people feel everything was under control. His wife, Mira, often said he was like a compass, quietly guiding. After 7 years of marriage, they hadn't had kids yet, just the two of them, navigating the rhythm of shared routines, candlelit dinners, and a cozy downtown condo filled with gentle affection and everyday laughter. Their marriage wasn't extraordinary, but it was dependable, a quiet, stable kind of love. On Saturdays, Peter volunteered at a Hyde Park outreach center, not for appearances, but because he found meaning in listening to others' resilience. It kept him grounded. That's where he met Caleb Simmons. Caleb was everything Peter wasn't: fast-talking, sharp-edged, magnetic. A creative strategist in the ad world, Caleb lived on adrenaline, rarely staying still. The two clicked instantly, Peter's composure offsetting Caleb's fire. Before long, Peter brought Caleb into his personal circle, introducing him to Mira. Caleb did the same, bringing along his wife, Rhea, a soft-spoken editor with quiet grace. Their casual meetings became traditions: weekend brunches, game nights, music swaps, spontaneous trips. On the surface, it was an idyllic double friendship, but underneath, something toxic brewed. The first crack in the facade was subtle. When Mira met Caleb, there was a flicker, a pause in her handshake, a moment of delay in her smile. Peter saw it, but brushed it off. His instinct was to believe. The second red flag was hidden in routine. Mira said she had a doctor's appointment one afternoon. That same day, Peter noticed Caleb leaving the outreach center early, citing an appointment of his own. Peter laughed about the coincidence at the time. Later, as Mira prepared dinner, he asked, "How was the appointment?" Her hesitation was slight, but it echoed. Then things began shifting. Mira's wardrobe evolved: form-fitting clothes, red lipstick early in the morning. Her phone, once carelessly unlocked, became a fortress. Her laughter at Caleb's jokes grew louder, too deliberate. Peter said nothing. He believed that enduring love required grace. But grace, unchecked, can become self-deception. The final fracture came one evening. Peter looked Mira in the eyes and calmly said, "Caleb told me everything." It was a lie. But her reaction unraveled the truth. She stumbled, fabricated, offered half-truths, and tried to walk them back. Peter took her phone. Then, without speaking, he went to confront Caleb. The truth landed like a blow. Yes, they had history. Yes, it had resumed. Yes, they had hidden it from both Peter and Rhea. And yes, they had slept together, more than once. Peter didn't raise his voice. He didn't smash anything. He returned home, handed Mira her phone, and said evenly, "Didn't even warn your lover." What followed was silence. She packed in near-total stillness. She descended the stairs like someone whose soul had been exiled. Then Peter made the next call, to Rhea. With Mira standing a few feet away, he exposed everything. That night, 2 relationships crumbled. But for Peter, it wasn't over. It was the beginning of a different reckoning. He didn't break down. He didn't beg. He didn't demand an explanation. Mira lingered at the threshold, suitcase trembling in her hand. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked before any words could form. Peter simply opened the door. No emotion, no softness, no discussion left. Just consequences. She walked out, And with her went the illusion they had both lived inside. That night, Peter didn't cry. He poured a glass of water, sat on the couch they had saved months to buy, and stared at the blank television. Still, quiet. Darkness closing in like a slow tide. The next morning, something small hit him. Brushing his teeth, he noticed faint fingerprints on the fogged mirror, remnants of Mira's morning ritual. It struck him. He hadn't just lost a partner, he'd lost the structure of a life. So Peter did what came most naturally. He started again. But not with warmth. This time, with ice. By the week's end, the divorce was underway. Cold, efficient, final. Mira had no legal entitlement to his finances. The condo, entirely his. Shared bank account, emptied and closed. Gym subscription, gone. Streaming platforms, passwords changed. Every photo, every message, erased. But he didn't block her number. That would have been kindness. He muted her instead. Silence cuts deeper than rage. As for Caleb, Peter targeted what mattered most, public image. Caleb had just secured a branding deal with a car company built on family values. Peter made one quiet move, a tip sent anonymously to someone in PR, a few photos from Mira's phone, a brief suggestion, check your ambassador's moral compass. Within 2 weeks, Caleb's contract was gone. No statement, no scandal, just silence, and the industry whispers that follow. Peter withdrew after that. He switched gyms, started running near Lake Michigan, declined therapy, words felt useless. But he kept a journal, not to process feelings, to record, to study, to plan. His world became smaller, but more focused, more precise, until something pierced through again. A package appeared one day. No return address, no note, just a box. Inside, a single photograph. Mira and Caleb sitting close at a cafe Peter once took her to for their anniversary. Scribbled on the back in ink, "You were never enough," no signature. But he recognized the venom. He didn't react. Instead, he dialed a familiar number, Ria's. They met at a quiet diner on the outskirts of the city. When she arrived, her face tired and eyes wary, he met her gaze and said, "They're still together, and they think we're done." She paused, then said simply, "Let's give them a story they'll never forget." And just like that, the dynamic changed. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about healing. It was about equilibrium, about reclaiming agency. Two betrayed souls united, not romantically, but in quiet retribution. No shouting, no drama, just justice. And no, Peter and Ria never became lovers, not even close. They played their parts like veterans of the stage, each move executed with calculated grace. It started at Mira's favorite restaurant. Peter had secured a reservation at the booth she used to fondly call ours. He arrived with Ria, both dressed in effortless sophistication, their laughter low and light, just enough to draw subtle glances, without inviting inquiry. They kept their distance, no lingering looks, no flirtatious gestures. Still, the implication was clear. Every aspect was intentional. A few tables away, a woman gasped, her spoon clattering to the floor at the sight of Peter. She wasn't the only one who noticed. Before dessert reached the table, a photo made its way to Mira's phone. No message, just a picture that spoke louder than words. The silence was broken by fury. By dawn, Mira was calling, first once, then 4 times. Peter let the calls go unanswered. So did Ria. Let them wonder, let doubt ferment. That was just the opening gambit. Peter hadn't let go of Caleb's ambitions. The man had once confided his hopes of landing a rebranding deal with a promising green tech firm. As fate would have it, the founder was a client of Peter's. At a charity gala, she sought Peter's perspective on Caleb's agency. With calm deliberation, Peter responded, "He's got ideas, but consistency isn't really his strength." It wasn't an outright dismissal. just enough to cast doubt. The deal Caleb had been chasing for months dissolved quietly, without fanfare. Meanwhile, Rhea was making her own moves. She volunteered with a non-profit initiative that Caleb's firm had previously supported. She never mentioned the affair. Instead, she showcased her skills, charmed the right people, and positioned herself as a media strategist of rare insight. The board took to her quickly. Within weeks, she was invited to join as a permanent advisor. Caleb's agency, however, was subtly pushed aside. There were no theatrics, just precision. Peter's life remained unchanged on the surface. Morning runs, hot showers, long hours, and quiet dinners. But beneath the calm, a quiet resolve smoldered. Every stumble Caleb and Mira made added fuel to that fire. But Peter wasn't untouched by the weight of it all. Some nights he stared at the ceiling, wondering if his silence made him as merciless as their betrayal. Some mornings, he barely recognized the face in the mirror. Still, he pressed on, because this wasn't about closure. Not yet. It was about reclaiming what they had stolen, his sense of self, each dishonest smile, each secret meeting. Each denial veiled as friendship. And then, one afternoon, a text arrived from an unknown number. "You win." Peter didn't need to guess. He read it once, then erased it. Winning was never the point. Watching them lose was. But what neither Caleb nor Mira foresaw was that Peter wasn't finished. He had always believed in endurance, in consequences that unfolded slowly and couldn't be erased with apologies or apologies wrapped in flowers. Justice, to him, was quiet and permanent. He already knew Mira was living with Caleb, had known for weeks, silently, without reaction. Meanwhile, Peter had assembled something of his own, a discreet circle of trusted contacts who noticed things, who owed him favors, who paid attention. Mira thought she had reinvented herself, severed ties with the past, but Peter had found a trail. During the divorce proceedings, he'd discovered a questionable transaction, $50,000 wired from Mira to a startup Caleb had co-founded and which had collapsed before their marriage. The funds had come from a joint investment account, assets considered shared. Peter had kept the paperwork. He scheduled a meeting with a corporate attorney. "Can this be pursued?" he asked calmly. The lawyer gave a slow, deliberate nod. "With the right framing?" "Without question." Soon after, Peter filed a civil suit, not criminal but impactful, a claim of misused marital funds. The papers were served to Caleb at the height of a high-profile product launch. Mira was at his side when it happened. Photos of the moment. Caleb frozen, envelope in hand, face burning with embarrassment, hit social media in minutes. From across the room, Rhea watched with a composed smile. She understood. This wasn't about money. It was about exposure, about dragging betrayal into the spotlight. Caleb's next business deal evaporated. Mira lost her freshly secured job after an anonymous HR report pointed out undeclared conflicts of interest. Then Peter delivered the final message. He purchased the long-abandoned domain of Caleb's failed startup and redirected it to a stark, unadorned page bearing a single line. "This is what betrayal creates. No names, no accusations. Just a chilling truth." It went viral. In that moment, Peter stopped being a casualty. He became the reckoning they couldn't avoid. Yet, revenge has its limits, and Peter had found his. He told his lawyer to accept only $1 in settlement. He didn't want the money. He wanted his name restored. That night, Peter stood by his apartment window, letting the sharp Chicago air rush through the room. He stayed there for a long time, breathing, grounded, alone. Then, on a whim, he picked up the phone. He called Rhea, not for plans or strategy, just for connection. She answered after 2 rings. "Peter?" Her voice carried a tremor, like she was answering a memory. "Yeah," he replied. "I know it's late. I just needed to hear someone who never lied to me." A pause followed. Then, "I'm glad you called." They met the next day at a secluded rooftop cafe known only to locals. The city skyline surrounded them in hushed splendor. Spring had begun to nudge winter aside, and the world felt suspended between decay and rebirth. They didn't bring up lawsuits or headlines or the viral domain. They talked about small things, how coffee hits differently in cold air, how wind against windows can sound like a melody, how silence, when shared, can feel like comfort. "Do you think we're just ghosts to them now?" Ria asked, stirring her tea. "Like we were only ever barriers to some illusion of a better life?" Peter exhaled, watching the fog drift across the city. "Maybe. But ghosts don't disappear. Ghosts remember." They exchanged a soft, bittersweet smile. Not lovers, not enemies. Just two people tethered by pain. Over the coming weeks, they met again and again. Not to fall in love, not to plot. Just to be real. There were no confessions, no dramatic conclusions. Only presence. But one evening, as they walked along the lakefront, Ria gently reached for his hand. Peter let her. It should have felt like resolution, like the start of something new. But it didn't. It felt borrowed. Not because of her, but because a piece of Peter still felt undone. She sensed it, as she always did. Without a word, she let go. And side by side, they kept walking. There are times when the kindest thing two broken people can offer one another is the decision to let go, rather than attempt to fix what cannot be made whole. That night, Peter stood at his kitchen sink, slowly rinsing a single dish, one glass, and a lone fork. What had once felt like a hollow ritual of loneliness had become something else, deliberate, almost meditative. The comfortable illusions life once offered had long since fallen away, but in their absence, he discovered a peculiar peace in the quiet. He no longer sought out love. He no longer searched for solace in people who were never meant to hold the weight of his hurt. Peter began volunteering again, though not where he and Caleb had once crossed paths. This place was distant in every way, miles apart and emotionally unrecognizable. He opted for the earliest shifts, the ones most avoided. The cold, gray mornings when hot meals found their way into the chilled hands of strangers. The conversations were brief, anonymous. He listened without needing to hold on, and he started writing once more. Not stories rooted in revenge, nor plots with purpose beyond himself. Just fragments of thought, reflections on people, on suffering, on the threads that tie us together. Words he never intended to share. He filled notebooks with entries no one would see, and that was enough. The writing became a quiet form of breathing. Nearly a year had passed when a letter arrived. No return address. But the handwriting was unmistakable. He knew it instantly. Mira. Inside, no long explanations, no apologies wrapped in regret. Just a single stark line. "The silence you left behind still speaks louder than any goodbye." Peter folded the letter gently, slid it back into its envelope, and tucked it into a drawer he would never open again. Because the truth was, he'd already let go, not by finding refuge in someone new, but by choosing to belong to himself. His version of justice hadn't come in fire or anger. It came clothed in stillness, in discipline, in quiet resolve. And so, this is where Peter's journey draws to a close. If the story left something with you, we welcome your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for giving this tale your time. If it resonated, there are more to explore here. Until then, take care, dear friend.